The second, better known in the rap world as Fetty Wap, faced a judge today. He was arrested this morning in New Jersey.
Rapper Fetty Wap was arrested in New Jersey for allegedly threatening to kill somebody over FaceTime. The 31-year-old is accused of calling someone on FaceTime back in December, showing a firearm and threatening their life.
Prosecutors saying it was an incident that stems from December when Wap allegedly held a gun up to the phone during a FaceTime call with another person, threatening multiple times to kill them. Wap was a clear danger to the community and actually revoked his bond. On the top count, he faces a minimum of 10 years in jail and a max of life in prison if convicted.
On December 11th, 2021, Willie Maxwell, once known to the world as music sensation Fetty Wap, came on FaceTime holding a gun, making chilling threats. At the time, Fetty was out on a $500,000 bond, facing a federal indictment tied to a large-scale drug dealing case.
The prosecutor argued the rapper violated his bail terms. Back in November, Fetty Wap was released on $500,000 bond after originally being arrested for conspiring to sell and possess deadly opioids, including heroin.
But that was not the only thing eating him up. He was hurting. His little brother and his 4-year-old daughter, Lauren, were gone.
She good. One baby hat. In my shoulder. In my little son right there.
Then someone on the call decided to cross the line and mock his loss. And at that moment, Fetty's tone shifted instantly. With a straight face, he replied, "I'm gonna kill you and everyone you're with."
She's disappointed, and from the video, there's no way of knowing Wap was holding a gun. No one searched his home, and he was being manipulated by the person on the other end who was clearly looking for a rise by calling Wap a, quote, rat, and talking about his young daughter who passed away.
Let's get into it. By the time that FaceTime ended, Fetty Wap's freedom was hanging by a thread. The gun, the words, the anger, they weren't just flashes of emotion. They were a direct violation of the $500,000 bond that had been keeping him out of jail. Federal bonds aren't suggestions, they're rules. No weapons, no threats, no behavior that even smells like danger. Break them, and the system moves fast. The law doesn't care about grief. Losing a little brother, losing a 4-year-old daughter pain doesn't excuse breaking a bond. All prosecutors saw was a man on video threatening someone, brandishing a weapon, and putting himself at risk of immediate incarceration. The violation was clear, undeniable. When the video hit the court record, the judge didn't flinch. There was no sympathy, no discussion of personal tragedy, no debate over intentions. Bond conditions are simple, and Fetty had shattered them in one moment. The court moved decisively. Bond revoked.
Wap was a clear danger to the community and actually revoked his bond. On the top count, he faces a minimum of 10 years in jail and a max of life in prison if convicted.
Just like that, $500,000 of freedom disappeared. No more meetings with lawyers and coffee shops. No casual check-ins. No walking outside on your own terms. Every liberty the bond allowed vanished in an instant. That FaceTime call became more than a moment of rage. It became a legal dagger. It was proof prosecutors needed, a document that couldn't be ignored, and a signal that his case was now under the full weight of the federal system. 1 second on a screen, one emotional outburst, one threat enough to erase any leniency he might have had. From this point, the case shifted. Fetty Wap was no longer just a rapper facing federal charges. He became a clear example of how quickly freedom can vanish when grief and rage collide. Every move from here on would be scrutinized. Every action weighted against the video that now existed on record. The dominoes were set. The legal collapse had begun. And while this might look like a random crash out, it wasn't. Every decision, every loss, every step that led him to that moment had stacked the deck. But the FaceTime call didn't happen in a vacuum. Long before the gun appeared on camera, Fetty Wap's freedom was already fragile. The streets had caught up with him, the feds were circling, and every move he made carried weight he could barely afford. It started at Rolling Loud, City Field. Police swooped in, and suddenly the party vibe of the festival turned into a legal headache. Fetty's name was tied to a kilogram-level redistributor label. That's not small-time street talk. That's federal language for serious drug distribution. When the USPS shipments started showing up in the investigation, it became clear this wasn't just some side hustle gone wrong. The scale was enough to put anyone behind bars for decades.
Back in November, Fetty Wap was released on $500,000 bond after originally being arrested for conspiring to sell and possess deadly opioids, including heroin.
And it didn't stop there. One of the correction officers tied to his case was dirty, bending rules, playing both sides. It made the whole system feel unpredictable, like you never knew where the next threat was coming from. Add weapons and $1.5 million seized, and suddenly the stakes aren't abstract. They're real, tangible, and heavy on the scales of justice. The mandatory minimum penalties hung over him like a storm cloud. Even a small misstep could trigger a sentence no one walks away from. Every move, every interaction, every phone call had to be measured. One wrong step, and it wasn't just his freedom on the line, it was decades in a cage. And yet, Fetty was out on bond, technically free, but the reality? That freedom was fragile. Walking the streets was like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. One false move, one impulsive reaction, and it could all crumble. And that FaceTime, that gun, that exact threat, it didn't just break a rule, it lit the fuse that had been burning under him for months. The system was breathing down his neck, ready to pounce, and the world was watching. All that pain, all that rage, grief stacking on top of danger, everything collided in one moment, and there was no turning back. But the law wasn't the only thing closing in. Long before the feds circled, life had already been testing him in ways no courtroom could measure. Loss had been stacking up quietly, painfully, shaping the man who sat on that FaceTime call. Tuition, his little brother, his twin in every way, was gone, murdered. The streets had taken him, and there was nothing Fetty could do to bring him back. Every quiet moment, every scroll through Instagram, every flash of memory reminded him that tuition wasn't there anymore, and he was. Survivor's guilt gnawed at him constantly. No fame, no money, no chart-topping hit could erase that. And then came Lauren, his 4-year-old daughter, tiny, full of life, gone too soon. Losing her didn't just hurt, it fractured him in a way that no courtroom lecture, bond condition, or legal argument could reach. Every little thing that reminded him of her laugh, her smile, the way she said his name cut deep. Every day became a balancing act between mourning, rage, and just trying to stay standing while the world kept spinning.
Too good. One big hat. My shoulder. My little turn right there.
Even the smallest things hit harder than they should. A simple butterfly request to honor Lauren's memory became a spark in a powder keg. Lawyers called it a perfect storm. The pressure of personal tragedies stacked on top of legal danger. But outside the courtroom, there were no labels, no definitions, just raw loss, grief, and the constant weight pressing down from every side. When the mocking comment came on FaceTime, all that pain didn't sit quietly. It erupted. The anger you saw wasn't sudden. It was years of grief, stress, and pressure finally colliding in one instant. One careless word, and it set off a reaction the world got to witness. This isn't about excuses. The gun, the threats, they had consequences. But understanding why it happened shows the mix of grief and pressure that had been building under the surface, waiting for a moment like that to boil over. The streets had already tested him. The law was ready to finish the job, and the weight of personal loss made it all hit harder than anyone could see. Before Tuition and Lauren, before that FaceTime, we need to understand where he was coming from. We need to see where it all started, why the streets always pulled at him. To understand Fetty Wap, we have to go to the beginning. Willie Jr. Maxwell II was born on June 7, 1991, in Paterson, New Jersey's 4th Ward, around 12th Avenue and East 22nd Street. New Jersey is a place he would later describe as where people get shot, do drugs, sell drugs, and fight every day. Life didn't start fair. He was born with congenital glaucoma in both eyes.
Yeah, we're in New York right now. Shout out to my hometown, Jersey. We're doing stage 48 tonight.
I'm from Paterson, New Jersey, and the label I'm under is 300.
By 6 months, doctors were fighting to save the vision in his right eye. The left was lost forever. Before his first birthday, he wore a glass eye, a mark that would follow him through childhood, schoolyard fights, and the streets. Growing up with one eye in a neighborhood like that wasn't easy. Kids were ruthless, but Maxwell wasn't the type to fold. He fought back, literally. One incident in particular would define him. Tired of the taunting, he picked up a school desk and threw it at a student. Confidence, grit, and a refusal to hide became part of who he was. As a teen, he chose to stop wearing the prosthetic altogether. "I didn't want to look like anybody else. I don't hide this, because this is who I am," he said. That choice carried weight in Paterson. Eastside High School, famously depicted in Lean on Me, was no sanctuary. Maxwell dropped out in the 10th grade, pulled by the streets he knew too well and the money he wanted sooner than school could give. Music came next. Almost by accident, Maxwell started recording tracks in a studio, putting his voice over beats that felt like home, like the streets he knew. Then came Trap Queen.
Like my music just come from whatever I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I don't base my music on like any sad stories or like, you know what I mean, struggles, because I don't want everybody to know.
The song didn't just hit, it exploded. One moment he was hustling in Paterson, the next he was on billboards, radio, and TV across the country. Remy boys were riding with him, and the world noticed. Streams, charts, awards, they piled up fast. A kid from the block had a $22 million peak, and it felt like the sky was the limit. Fame brought money indoors, but it also put his past in focus. Every connection, every loose thread from the streets became sharper. He spent fast, giving to family, friends, even folks who had his back before anyone knew his name. Fame didn't change the streets. They reminded him that respect and survival were still earned. The spotlight didn't last forever. Touring slowed, checks thinned, and the streets started calling louder than the music. The empire built on Trap Queen was massive, but fragile. Money couldn't erase the pull of the life he had grown up in. When the call of the streets grew louder than the music, Fetty had no choice but to answer. Touring dried up, the label bills stacked, and the money that once flowed from Trap Queen slowed to a trickle. With no checks coming in, the streets called louder than ever. Kilos had to move, pipelines kept running, and one slip could cost everything. He went back to the business he knew, the one that had built him before the fame. Financing kilos, managing pipelines, moving products from the West Coast to Long Island. The operation wasn't random. It was methodical, careful, but still risky. Every delivery, every connection carried the same weight as the courtroom that had been breathing down his neck. One slip could put him back behind bars, this time for a long time. Role escalation came naturally, where once he might have just been another hand, now he was directing moves, keeping eyes on the product, keeping the cash flowing, keeping the crew safe. The streets respected him, but respect didn't protect you from law enforcement or from the betrayal that always lingered close. Every day was a balancing act between feeding the streets, avoiding law enforcement, and managing the life he had built from music. But with each kilo, each move, the risk multiplied. And the feds? They were always a step behind, watching, waiting, circling closer. The stakes were higher than ever. The music had slowed, the money wasn't endless, and the streets demanded loyalty, action, and results. There was no room for mistakes, and he knew it. Every call, every meet, every transport could be the one that ended it all. And then the inevitable happened. The law finally caught up. The same system he had danced around before, the same feds he'd been outsmarting for months, made their move. All the careful planning, all the street smarts, and the fame couldn't stop what was coming. The rise from Trap Queen to millions had been explosive, but the streets and the law don't care about charts or awards. One day you're at the top, the next the walls are closing in, and there's no one to blame but yourself and the life you chose. The door slammed behind him, and just like that, freedom was gone. The bond that had held him up, fragile as it was, didn't mean a thing anymore. One FaceTime, and the system came down on him like a storm that had been waiting for years. No excuses, no sympathy. The judge didn't care who he was, how much money he made, or how much pain he carried. Rules were rules. Inside, the walls closed in fast. Every move he had made on the streets, every call he thought was quiet, every past connection he trusted, it all came back sharp, heavy, impossible to shake. Fame didn't matter here. Billboard hits didn't matter. Trap Queen and $22 million couldn't soften the bars that held him. He thought about all the choices, the risks he had taken, how close he had come to walking free again. And now, each memory felt like a chain. The weight of tuition, of Lauren, of every loss, pressed harder. The streets, the music, the money, it had all been temporary. The law wasn't patient, it doesn't forgive, it doesn't wait. Every day was the same. Wake up, count the hours, survive the guards, survive the men who had been waiting, watching. Every step was measured, every glance calculated. The world outside kept moving, but he was frozen in a cage built from his own choices, from the tragedy and anger that had pushed him too far. There were no cameras, no fans, no applause, just silence, cold concrete, the echo of his own mistakes bouncing off the walls. The fall wasn't flashy, it wasn't cinematic, it was real, methodical, relentless. One by one, the pieces of his old life were stripped away, leaving only what he couldn't escape, himself, the loss, and the consequences he had to face. And in that silence, he felt it all, the grief, the rage, the streets calling even when he couldn't answer, the law closing in, the memories stacking on top of one another. Nothing softens it, nothing excuses it. This was the cost. The courtroom was quiet. The judge reviewed the papers. The plea deal was clear. Cocaine-only charges, 6 years in prison, and the corrections officer tied to the case received the same sentence. This deal kept him from facing the other charges that could have added decades. He signed the documents and nodded. There were no speeches, no excuses. The sentence was set. Everything he had done up to that point, the threats, the moves on the streets, the losses led to this moment. Fame, money, and music had no power here. Only the law mattered. Every day of the next 6 years would remind him of the choices he had made. The plea was complete. The papers were filed and the sentence fixed. He was going back to prison, carrying the consequences of his actions, but at least he was still alive and able to see the next chapter. Prison was quiet, forcing a long look at everything, mistakes, losses, and anger. For the first time, the truth couldn't be ignored. Admitting it wasn't easy, avoiding responsibility, letting grief and rage run unchecked, thinking fame could shield him. It all caught up. The money, the industry, the way it pulled people in, created a false sense of control. Even mentorship, like guidance from 50 Cent, came too late to stop the fall. Every choice that led to this moment belonged to him. The gun, the threats, the moves back to the streets, they weren't anyone else's doing. Grief and fame didn't excuse it. Accountability wasn't just a word. Living it meant facing the consequences every day. Thoughts of his daughter and brother never faded, a constant reminder that the cost of this life was real and permanent. Money and hits couldn't erase that. Now, after serving time, the gates opened, and the world he had left behind didn't wait. Streets, old friends, the people he had crossed paths with, everything was still there, unchanged and unforgiving. Fame didn't soften the edges. Music hadn't paused. The internet hadn't forgotten.
Okay, so yesterday, Fetty Wap was seen for the first time because he was released after serving 3 years of a 6-year sentence, and I received.
And for Fetty, life outside wasn't easy. Finances were messy, and rebuilding trust took time he didn't have. Every step required caution. Every conversation carried the weight of the past. Even small mistakes could escalate, and he felt it immediately. Adjusting meant learning to measure every move again, balancing freedom with the reality of everything that had led him to prison. The industry offered opportunities, but the mistakes he made before hung over every decision, a reminder that nothing was guaranteed. Early release gave him a chance to breathe, to see the world from the other side of the bars, but it didn't erase what happened. Vision care, small responsibilities, rebuilding relationships, it was all part of learning to exist again in a world that never paused for him. The streets, the losses, the fame, they were still there, Nothing changed that, and in the end, he was out, but the silence around him was heavier than any applause.